What's up, everyone? It's Christina from the Glaser Tutoring Company, and today we are going to be solving this system of equations by the addition method. So we have a beautiful system of equations. I know that this is a system of equations because the system is when they give you two or more equations, right? So if I have this beautiful equation, it's got an x and a y value, this equation, which has an x and a y value, I have two or more equations, this is classified as the system. Okay, now we basically have to solve this system. Well, what does that really mean? Now, first off, I notice that since both of these equations have only an x value and a y value, right? And notice how they're not x squareds or y cubes or y to the fourth or x to the third, whatever, that since it's just one for one, these are linear lines. So if one of my equations maybe is a linear line like this, and the other equation is a linear line like this, the solution, or what we have to solve for, is where they come together. So x marks the spot. The solution is basically the point that they have in common. So if I'm trying to find a point, right, that's just all we have to do is just find out the x and y point, right? Because this is just one single definite point. It's got an x coordinate and it's got a y coordinate on the graph. So that's basically what we're solving for. We're solving for that point in which they have an interaction with. Now in this case, we have to do it via the addition method. Now there's basically three ways of solving systems of equations. You could do the substitution method, you could do the addition method, or the elimination method. Addition and elimination are very, very, very similar, but we're going to do addition. Now, if we're doing the addition method, that means that we're literally adding the two equations together. So at the end of the day, I know that I have to add these guys together. But this is the problem where we can't have two variables going on at the same time. We have to cancel one of them out, which means that one of your equations has to have a positive x and the other one has to have a negative x, because if we're going to add these two values together, what did I say? I said negative x, but I put down a negative y. Sometimes my brain goes where my brain wants to go. If we add these two together, these x values are going to cancel out. So the same thing is if you have a positive y value and a negative y value, right? If you add these two up, they cancel out. And if you have 2x, this has to be a 2x. They cancel, right? And even if you're dealing with fractions, right? If you had a 1/4 y, then you have to have a negative 1/4 y when you add them together. So that's the thing here. Now, I noticed that I have a 1/3 x and a negative 1/2. Ooh, that's not the same number. And then for the y's, I have a 1/9 and a 4/5. So that's not the same number. I have to make somehow both of these have the same either x or y value. Now in this case, pick the one that looks the easiest to work with, right? Now in this case, I look at my 1/9 and 4/5, right? I would have to change the 9 and the 5. The only number that 9 and 5 have in common is 45. And I don't want to really be working that, with those high numbers. But if I look over here, I already see that the 1/3 is positive and this negative, the 1/2 is negative. So I already have the positive and the negative going on here. Now I basically just have to come up with the right number. What do these numbers have in common? Well, the 3 and the 2, I could turn these into a 6, right? So, let's get to it. Now, maybe what we can do is multiply the whole value by something in which they have in common, right? Now, what you can do is you can multiply by the other value. So, in this case, if this was a 1/2, I'm going to multiply this guy by a 1/2. And since this was a 1/3, I'm going to multiply the bottom equation by a 1/3. Now I don't have to multiply it by a negative 1/3 because this already has the negative and the positive. So you just have to multiply it by your numbers. But you got to be fair. if you're multiplying this by 1/2, you got to do it for every one of them. And the same thing for the bottom. So whatever that is, we're going to multiply each one. So we're just going to take it one step at a time. So maybe we'll say that this is equation number 1, right? So equation 1, 1/2 times 1/3. Remember, when you're multiplying ratios, when you're multiplying fractions, you multiply the top numbers and the bottom numbers together. So 1 times 1 for the top is 1, over 2 times 3 is 6. Now that's an x value. And let's keep going. So now we're going to multiply 1/2 times 1 over 9. So 1 times 1 is 1, and then 2 times 9 is 18. So there you go with that. Equals 1 times 2 is 2, over 2 times 9 is 18. Okay. And maybe we'll do x's for blue and y's for red. Now we just have to do the same thing for equation number 2. So we'll put equation number 2. 1/3 times negative 1/2. So that's going to be the negative 1/6. So let's make that a little bit prettier. Negative 1 over 6. And that's going to be the x value. 1 times 4 is 4. So plus 4. 4 over 3 times 5 is 15. And that's going to be a y value. And then this is going to be 1 times 1 is 1, over 3 times 3 is 9. And since this is negative, this would be a negative 1/9. Okay, so now let's just make this beautiful. X and y. All right. We are ready to do the addition method because, remember, the whole thing was that we wanted to get one value, the same number, one positive and one negative. And in this case, it's the 1/6. So I have 1/6 x and a negative 1/6 x. And when you add those two together, they will cancel. And then you're only left to deal with your y values. So once you have that, we're going to add them together and see what comes out of it. So 1/6 x minus 1/6, goodbye. This goes bye-bye. And now we have this mess, right? We have 1/18 plus 4/15. So we know that this has to be some value. Let's just put that here, right? If we need to, we'll do the math. And we know that that's going to be a y value if we add these two values together. Now this, on the other hand, right, this we have to add up together as well. This looks easier to do than this right from the get, so I'm going to add these up. Now 2 over 18 plus a negative 1 over 9. This is the same thing as saying 2 over 18 minus 1/9. Now, keep in mind with fractions, right? If you're subtracting or adding fractions, the denominators have to be the same. So I have an 18 for one and a 9 for the other one. I can turn this into an 18 because 9 times 2 is 18. But whatever number I do on the top, the number I do on the bottom, I got to do on the top. So this would be the same thing as 2 over 18 minus 1 times 2 is 2. 9 times 2 is 18. And this actually is a big fat 0. Oh, that changes the game. Because even if we get a value for this, right? Even if I get a value, and if I just plug this into the calculator real quick, right? But you could always do the math, work it out just like we did for the other one. You would get 29 over 30. I mean, that's a crazy value, right? But try it out. Good to do your, fraction work. So 1 over 18 plus 4/15 is 29 over 90. But, and maybe what I'll do is I'll get rid of this now because now we know the number. But in this case, we need to solve for y. And even if this was any value, right, 1, 2, 3, any fraction, if you have to solve for y, right, I would times this whole thing by the reciprocal, so 90 on the top, 29 on the bottom. So the same thing over here, 90 on the top, 29 on the bottom, but any number times 0 is just going to be a big fat 0. This cancels. And now we know that our y value equals 0. Okay, so one step done. We know our y coordinate. Our y coordinate is 0. So halfway there. Now we just got to find out what the x coordinate is, right? So now here comes the second step. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to bring this over. And maybe I can put this over here. Okay, because the second step now is we're going to plug in our 0 value for our y's. And it doesn't really matter what equation you use when you do the addition method. So I could go for the top one, I could go for the bottom one. I would just pick the one that makes the most sense to you. Maybe since, these are all positives, this looks a little easier for me to use. So I'm just going to use equation 1 again. So in this case, I'm going to use 1/3, and that's the x value. But now we know what the y value is. So when I say plus 1/9, I'm going to times it by that y value, which is 0. And then equals to 2/9. Well, anything times 0 is 0, so this gets canceled out beautifully. So I have 1/3, and that's the x value, equals 2/9. Let's solve for x. It's being multiplied by 1/3, so we can multiply by the reciprocal, right? 1/3 is the same thing as doing the reciprocal 3/1. And you do it on both sides. Keep in mind that you could also cross multiply if you wanted and solve that way as well, just doing it different ways. This goes bye-bye, and let's figure this out. So x equals 2 times 3 is 6, 9 times 1 is 9. You could also simplify straight away. 3 and 9, they go together, right? I can divide both numbers by 3. This would be a 1, and then this would be a 3. So now 2 times 1 is 2, and 3 times 1 is 3. So your x value is 2/3. And we have finally found the solution. So all we have to do now is put it in coordinate form, right? Or in ordered pair. Solve. We know that this is 2/3. So we got, we'll put it right in the middle. We got an x value of 2/3. And we have a y value of 0. And that coordinate is where these two lines intersect. And that is the end. What'd you think? I hope this helped. Let me know in the comments. Subscribe to the channel if you want to help us out. Like the video and tell your friends, tell your classmates. We love helping anybody that we can. Thank you so much for all the support. Also, I would like to give a huge shout out to Maricela. Thank you so much for being a member to the channel. Your support means a lot to my brother and me, and we're thrilled to have you be a part of this amazing community. Memberships are open on the channel, and if you want to become a member, just click that join button, which can be found below on any video if you're watching on your desktop, or it can be found on the overall channel page too. For all of you that want your name shown in the video, don't forget to choose the gold tier or higher. Thank you so much for considering, and have a great day. Talk to you in the next lesson. Bye-bye!